Arthur Smitherman spent his early years in North York, and his father started his trucking company here. For the last 40 years, he has worked in the service business, both in transportation and financial services. Arthur's informal studies in anthropology led him to a diversified post-secondary education, and he has obtained about 45 credits. He obtained a legal assistant diploma from the Career College and a certificate in dispute resolution from York University. Most recently, he's been working with U.S. Securities Attorney and operating an FINRA registered funding portal. He intends to use crowdfunding to help small businesses get established and for local groups to fund their projects. Let's give it up for Arthur Smitherman.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm particularly obliged to the York Federation of Students for organizing this debate. The important thing that I need to get across here is that the information technology age and its effects on people have been vastly underestimated, and this phenomenon is exacerbated by globalization. Society will advance more in the next 20 years than it has in the last 200. We must adapt to these challenges to remain competitive in the workplace, as a society, and in the global markets. We can look to the example of the Neanderthals and the woolly mammoths to understand what happens to those that do not adapt to their surroundings. They become extinct. At the municipal level, we can look at the case of Detroit to see what happens to a municipality that does not rise to its challenges. For some cities, it is too much, and for others, it's an opportunity to compete and be prosperous. According to Professor Halchansky's work, 3 Cities, Toronto is 3 cities in one, and they are segregated by economic class: the rich, the poor, and the middle class. The rich are getting richer and are typically well-educated and generally locate in the downtown core, around the subway system, where a misappropriate proportion of city resources tend to gravitate to. Poverty is spreading in pandemic proportions in Toronto, and this is creating a drag on the middle class. In fact, 53% of Torontonians will be under the low-income cutoff by 2025. The important message here is that there are some deep structural problems in the city of Toronto, and 22 high-poverty areas have manifested due to the unequal distribution of resources. Namely, Ward 8, the M3N and M3J postal codes are amongst the poorest of Canada. We must face the reality that the city has not invested in critical components of its infrastructure. Our labor pool is undermined by a grossly inefficient transit system. The person who lives at Jane and Bloor and uses TTC to get to work in 30 minutes has a distinct competitive advantage over the person who lives at Jane and Finch, who takes 2 hours to get to work. The simplest antidote known to mankind to remedy poverty is in fact improved transit. I have supported the Ford economic agenda since 2010, and I do so for a reason. The Ford economic agenda treats the root cause of Toronto's problems rather than treat the symptoms of Toronto's problems. And the genius of the Ford economic agenda is its simplicity. By keeping taxes low, Torontonians will have an environment that is conducive to business, and it will keep precious dollars in your pocket. This is particularly important to the poor, who pay a misappropriate portion of taxes compared to the rich. It also enables us to compete in the global markets, as both human and financial capital tends to gravitate towards jurisdictions that are fairly taxed. Improved transit allows our labor pool to be more competitive. Subways make it interesting for developers. They bring jobs and housing. Subways make it possible to completely rejuvenate communities. Subways make it possible for communities to prosper for decades to come. I would point to an example I call the Hallmark model. Looking to the southeast corner of Yonge and Sheppard, having a subway in the basement of this office condo project made it interesting to Tridel to develop this project And this is exactly what we need to do here at Jane and Finch. We have a 20-acre parcel, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's Drydell that owns it. We need to locate a business condo type operation there with the subway in the basement to entirely rejuvenate the economy of the Jane and Finch community. Stopping the gravy train at City Hall would put more money in the hands of the poor and middle class and make Toronto a world-class city that businesses will choose to locate in. I'm Arthur Smitherman, and I'm a proud member of Ford Nation, because Ford Nation means respect for taxpayers and promises made are promises kept. So please, on Election Day, support Ford Nation, vote for Doug Ford for mayor, Arthur Smitherman for city council, and Tiffany Ford for school trustee.
Thank you to everyone who asked questions today, and also thank you to the three wonderful candidates who were kind enough to come and speak to folks at York University. With that, we'll move on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing statement.
Okay, so firstly, once again, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I know you have very busy schedules and there's other things you could be doing, so thank you for getting involved in a participatory democracy. I believe that I have some competitive strengths over my two candidates. One, I don't lean to any form of extremism, which both my candidates, fellow candidates, have a record of doing. And I'm a mutual interest negotiator, first and foremost. I don't view things in political paradigms, left versus right. I think that will bring better value to every single person in the ward, but it also makes me more collaborative than most people. So Ward 8 in many respects is a city of three cities in itself, is that we do have a very large, prosperous business section, which really isn't integrated with the rest of the ward. We also have the middle class and the poor, and of course the York University, which is virtually an untapped resource. And collectively, the resources aren't working together to bring the best value for everybody. So I'm trying to find some openings and so on and so forth where we can better leverage our resources and get more out of this for everybody. But I'm also involved in crowdfunding. So many of the projects that are both for entrepreneurs and for people with various special interests, we can certainly look to crowdfunding, and I'm certainly capable of supporting them and helping them along their way in that regard. So please vote for me, Arthur Smitherman, on October 27th, and please consider voting for Doug Ford for mayor and Tiffany Ford for school trustee.